Welcome to the Bowhunter Podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Now, here's your host, editor Christian Berg.
All right, welcome back to the Bowhunter Podcast. We are all bow hunting all the time, and today we are going to have a great conversation about a topic that unfortunately is going to be timely for at least some of you in the days, weeks, and months ahead, and that is what to do when you've shot an animal and you've lost the trail. Oh, it's not something that I love talking about, but it's so important because it does happen, and the decisions that you make when that uncomfortable situation arises and you get that pit in your stomach and you're not quite sure what to do are critical. And for that, I've got a great friend, a great bow hunter, and most importantly, a great person from the Centennial State, home of great hunting and legal marijuana, Mr. Jace Bauserman.
Well, thanks for the intro. Just so we're all on the same page, my county actually voted down the legalization of marijuana in this great state, and you can't sell it in this county. But
Okay, so what you're saying is you partake heavily in the great bow hunting of Colorado, but not so heavily in the THC consumption.
That's it. You got it. You nailed it, buddy. You nailed it. And I wish we were talking about a different subject, but unfortunately we're not. And fortunately, I think it's something that's going to help some people out. And even just coming to the realization, whether you're a new bow hunter or one that's been doing it for as long as we have, in bow hunting, it's Murphy's Law, man. What can go wrong sometimes does go wrong, and it happens. So let's talk about it.
Well,
shall we?
Well, you said yes, we shall. But before we do, because you just said, I wish we were talking about a different subject. We're gonna have a little different subject before we dive into this meaty topic, and that is, so Jace and I are both the proud parents of multiple kids, but college kids, and you were out of town this past weekend for Parents Weekend on campus, right? So tell me a little bit about the trip before we dive into the elk recovery.
Well, Parents Weekend, honestly, if you think about it, it's very selfish of these colleges to put it in the month of September. There should be nothing else allowed in September. But no, it was great. She went to West Texas A&M, and that was the third time I'd actually been down there. Moved her down there, went down there for orientation, and then we went down for Parents Weekend, got to take in a football game. They won. She loves it down there. It's a very big campus, it feels like, in a very small community just outside of Amarillo. Great people. And we had a blast. So my wife didn't cry as long on the trip home this time. It was just a short burst, which is totally understandable. And she's actually loving it. She is absolutely loving it. So we had a blast, man.
Well, that is great. I didn't even know where. I knew it was West Texas A&M, but I didn't know where it was. So Amarillo. I have never been to West Texas. Never been to Amarillo. What am I missing?
You are missing just really good people. That's what I'll say. Really, really, really good people. Anybody you run into says hello. People wave at you. People hold doors for people. And it's just a really, and there's some really good restaurants. There's some good barbecue. And I went to Buc-ee's. I'd never been to a Buc-ee's convenience store, man, and I'm sold. I'm thinking about resigning my post as an outdoor writer and going to work at Buc-ee's because it was awesome.
Well, not only is it awesome, did you get the brisket, by the way?
No, I'm not even kidding. I literally just had, because I bought one and brought it home, and I just had it for lunch.
How was
just now? Because I had one while I was in the store, and then I was like, okay, I got to buy another one.
But it was reheat. Oh, okay. So you had one fresh. Because I was going to say, you can't take it home and reheat
Oh, no,
it.
no. I had one fresh at the store, but then I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy another one because I thought I was that hungry. And then we got in the car and I realized I wasn't that hungry. So I wrapped it up, put it in the cooler, and it just became my lunch.
By the way, folks, Bucky's is
It's
not
good.
Bucky's is not a sponsor of the Bowhunter podcast. But I want to show you something because I have a little tip. If you're on a hunt, if you're going out of
Bucky.
if you're going out of state to hunt, if you're going out of state to hunt, you have to do this. I'm holding this up to the camera. Can you see this?
You have a Bucky's chapstick.
It's a Bucky's lip balm. It comes in two. Okay, folks, you don't get this kind of intel and insight on every podcast. This is a Bucky's lip balm. It comes in two varieties. This is the yellow label. The yellow label's the standard. The red label is the SPF 15 with sunscreen. You can get those tubes of Bucky's lip balm for 99 cents a piece. I'm telling you, it is the only lip balm that I will carry in the field. It keeps my lips protected throughout all bow hunting conditions from opening day right up through the late season. It is fantastic. And every time, so your daughter's at West Texas A&M, you had a great trip. Our son is an Army cadet at the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina. Whenever I go to Charleston, we stop at the Bucky's in Florence, South Carolina, and I stock up on that lip balm like there is no tomorrow, Jace.
I see a gear feature coming on. I really do for Bucky's. We'll do a full feature on both chapsticks. We will get into the detail of the inside briskets, really get behind the scenes and why you want to.
Do you know they allow, I think they allow overnight parking and they have dump stations there and stuff. What if we truck camped in a Bucky's parking lot and we outfitted everything for our hunt out of Bucky's? Do you know what my wife saw when we were coming out for Parents Weekend a couple weeks ago? They have these umbrellas that are on this like flexible rod with a clamp on the end. It's for when you go to watch your kids like soccer game, you put out your camp chair. Well, it had this umbrella that clamps onto the frame to like protect you from the sun or the rain. And it was like $7.99. And I was thinking, I need one of those for hunting. Like, you're sitting out in the woods, you get like a little shower or the sun is glaring. You just put your Bucky's umbrella on the chair and you're set, brother.
The deals are endless. I love it. I love it. Let's do it.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, we really got to dive into like something a bit more serious, but I'm glad you had a good visit.
Yes, I'm glad you did too.
I'm glad you made it home safe and sound. And I want to remind everybody, as I said, the Bowhunter podcast is not brought to you by Bucky's. Who it's brought to you by actually is Lancaster Archery Supply. For all your bow hunting needs, visit lancasterarchery.com. Why, you ask? Well, because they've got the gear, they've got the knowledge, and they've got the passion. So with that, Mr. Bauserman, there's no good transition. So let's just make an abrupt transition because I can't think of how to tie Bucky's into your elk hunt. But for those who don't know Jace, this guy is like one of the hardest hunting hombres that you will ever meet. And you're one of those guys that you're out there. I mean, like, I'm just going to say, Jace, when the seasons are open, you're out in the field probably at least part of almost every day.
Yeah, truly do. And that's a fact. A lot of people I get messages all the time, like, how do you write as many articles as you do? How do you do this? And it's that right there. It's just straight up caffeine this time of year and all year. Cause my wife told me if I don't slow down, I'm going to have a stroke, but I sleep very little. I get up very early or I stay up very late just so I can make time because I want to be in the woods. I want to be in the field. And it's hard for me when a season's open and I have a tag in my pocket to be doing other things. Yeah, I try to get out there as much as I can. And I think that has led to some really awesome experiences over the years and has given me enough knowledge to speak on different topics like the one we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. So long story short, you And you elk hunt every year somewhere in
every year.
Colorado. I know
Oh yeah.
you like to accumulate points, and every so many years you'll draw, maybe a unit that's a little more special, but you've got some areas, not too far from home there that are good public land spots. And
Yeah,
it's kind of non-traditional elk habitat, if you will,
it
from
is.
what, when I say that, I'm talking about other people like me from back
Sure.
east. We think of coming out and going up into the mountains and the big timber. And really you live down on the flatlands, the prairies of
Yep.
Colorado, and you have very broken cover in your neck of the woods.
It is. It's very broken. It's very, I always tell people, like, think of Arizona, New Mexico, what you'd see on outdoor television when guys are hunting out New Mexico and Arizona, as far as the landscape. But I would say even more broken. Just big, lots of separation between where elk are and where elk aren't. And a lot of times it takes weeks just to find a bull to hunt, whether it's a big bull, any bull, whatever. It just sometimes it takes weeks to find an elk to hunt. So, and like you said, yeah, I'll get up into the mountains. Get up into the mountains quite frequently. But yeah, if I don't pull a tag that I really, really am looking forward to in the mountains, I spend a lot of time here because it is close to home and I can bounce in and out of spots quickly. And it's one of those things where I can leave at 2 or 3 in the morning and be back by noon if it's one of those days where just not a lot's going on. So, or I can vice versa do it in the evening. So it is nice to be able to hunt them close.
So set the stage for us. What's the date that we're talking about here, and talk a
Yeah.
little bit about the area where you're going, and was it just
Mhm.
like what you're talking about, one of these day hunts where you leave the house first
Yep, it
thing and get
was.
out there?
Yep. Yep, freak deal, September 9th. Absolutely, was with a good buddy of mine, and, we pulled up to a spot, and, this was one, an area that we could access just out of using the truck, and, now, when I say that, I mean, we had then moved quite a great distance from the truck, but the access was used just using the truck, and we parked and we took off walking in the dark, and that's something we do a lot because we have areas that we know we want to call from because in these areas, one of the things that to understand is that because there's not a lot of trees and it's not very dense, and we don't have a lot of humidity, the sound really carries. And these elk, because there are so few, because it is such low density, a lot of times if an elk hears another elk, they're going to sound off or come or whatever that may be. So we try to get in areas where we know we've been in the past where sound's going to carry. And we walked up to one of these areas and it was literally just cracking light. In fact, I don't even know that it was legal shooting light when I first bugled. And I just let out a bugle, and I mean, I stopped the bugle and it was already coming back to me. And this bull was close. This bull was 150 yards close, right on the other side of a little mouth of a canyon that came up. And so we just kind of we actually had to work back, didn't make another sound. We had to work back to get the wind right on this bull. And as we were doing that, thank God he wasn't moving, but he was just bugling on repeat. I mean, he was just letting us know, I'm over here, I'm over here, I'm over here. But there's a little canyon finger that really separated us. So we were able to work down, up, and around that canyon. And by then, of course, now we're well into legal shooting light, but still not even sunrise yet. We're in that half hour before time frame. And my buddy Jay backed up, hit him with a couple cow calls, and like literally he bugled and then didn't say another word, showed up 47 yards. And that's something else in our country is a lot of times your shots are more than 40 because it's so open in a lot of places. And he started to skirt me a little bit, and I shot, and I did not hit the bull well. I fully believe I would have hit the bull well. It's been a great fall. I've made some great shots, but there was a small little cedar that I did not see. And my arrow actually hit the cedar, and I saw my lighted knock really tail, and I hit the bull back, and then he took off running. So there the scene is set.
Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, what a perfect morning up until that point, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it was great. It was great.
like everything you could imagine, like what we all dream about. Like
Yeah.
you walk right in there and have your very first bugle is answered, and you literally, I mean, within a couple of minutes, you're coming to full draw.
Yeah, it was actually it was the first bugle of 2025. And it was this we were laughing about it later. It's like, man, that never happens. Let alone happen where the bull is willing and ready to come. And and I do want to preface, like, when I say I didn't see the cedar, when I sat down, I did take note of it. And this is something important for everybody, is I did take note of it, but I also quickly disregarded the fact that it was there. One, because it was so small, and two, I did not anticipate that bull to work the way he did to get to where Jay was calling. And so when the bull was coming through the timber, I think one of the biggest mistakes elk hunters make a lot is they wait too long to draw and they get busted. So I was able to go ahead and hit full draw. And then as that bull came through the timber, he started working to my right, which I wasn't expecting. And so I'm on my knees and I'm just pivoting with the bull. And when I stopped him and my release broke at that point, and I saw the arrow kick, and it still didn't dawn on me until my buddy Jay got over there. And I was like, I was so adamant because I felt like I made such a good shot and executed such a good shot that I told Jay, I said, hey, watch that cedar up there. Look at that cedar tree. And he goes, yeah, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to shoot it. He's like, with another arrow? I said, yes, something's wrong here. I said, my arrow really whipped. I said, it really tail whipped. And so he's like, hold on. So he's standing right behind me and he's looking and he's like, did you hit that cedar? And then at that moment, it was like, God, what a freaking rookie bonehead mistake. And we literally walked up there and you could see where the arrow had actually, it was a green cedar. So it wasn't like a twig or anything. It was actually live, and it just lopped it over.
What, I mean, you talk about a cedar. I mean, we're talking about like a sapling. Are we talking about something?
Yeah,
That's
we're
like,
talking about, so we're just talking about we're
like
talking
how
about a
thick?
twig.
Like,
We're talking about a twig of a cedar that's green,
but like
of a young sapling cedar just starting out.
like as thick as one of your fingers.
Yeah, about as thick as my pinky. That's about how thick
Okay.
it was. Yep.
Gotcha. So, so you hit this thing, and obviously, at this point, you can't rewind time. So,
No.
where did you hit this bull?
So that was another thing that was a little bit questionable, is because of my arrow was tailing so far. I mean, it looked like such a poorly tuned arrow once it hit the cedar. I couldn't tell if I was I couldn't tell if I was I knew I was in the guts, liver, paunch area. I knew that it was somewhere in there. My hope was that it held on enough to catch liver. But the bull was also slightly quartering, he was actually slightly quartering away. And my arrow, because of the kick, was actually going and angling back up in the bull towards his hip rather than up in toward the liver. So that gave me even more pause. And then when he turned to run, he ran like he was lung shot. I mean, but that was just that adrenaline burst. And he ran about 30 yards at full tilt and then hooked it back into that canyon mouth that I was kind of telling you about. And then he instantly just started to walk. And I mean like a graduation walk, like foot together, foot together. And I got to see that for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, and then he disappeared.
Yeah. So, and obviously, this is before your buddy gets back over to you, and
Right.
and you go through all that. So, like, you know, like initial reaction, like what's going through your head right now when you're still there right after the shot?
just how frustrated I was. I was like, you go through that and you're like, yeah, you're better than this. You suck. You work all year for this, and you got it handed to you on a silver platter, and you still managed to screw it up. And it was, I guess the thing that was just running through my mind is like, 2 weeks before that, I made a great shot on an antelope that was much further. I made a great shot on a white-tailed deer that was 3 yards further. He was straight 50. And this was a trash can lid of lungs that I just somehow managed to screw up. And oh gosh, it just was,
Well,
it was
yeah.
irritating.
Well, and this brings me to the first, what I think is a very important first point, which is this. Look, bad shots happen, and bad shots happen for all number of reasons. Whether it's you hit a limb like you did, whether you quite frankly just made a bad shot, because
You just rushed it.
sometimes we make bad shots.
Yep.
Maybe you had buck or bull fever. Maybe you
Yep.
just pulled the shot. Who knows? Maybe you had an equipment malfunction. Maybe you used the wrong pin, or you forgot to adjust your pin to the range, but point is, we could sit here and spend the rest of this entire episode, Jace, analyzing like why the shot was bad. But you know
Right.
what? For the purpose of our topic, which is about finding the animal, you have to very quickly move on mentally. Like, yeah, you could sit
You
on
do.
the side. You could
You
sit
do.
there and beat yourself up all day, Jace, and cry about it and tell yourself how much you suck. But guess what? Your job just changed. It's not about the shot anymore. The shot's over.
No.
Now
Yep.
you have to get on being the best tracker and game recovery expert that you can be.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
I'm guessing you knew you hit well back. You're not going to do
yep.
anything right away. You're going to give time is the first thing, right?
Yeah, and so I'm a little different in the aspect of this. Elk are so big and they're so tough. If you haven't hunted them, they're so big, they're so tough. They have such a strong will to live, just like any animal. I didn't even walk over to where I last saw him go into the timber. Jay walked up. We discovered I hit the cedar, and he said, what do you want to do?" Because Jay doesn't bow hunt a lot. And I said, it's minimum of 10 hours. I said, minimum of 10 hours, probably going to be more like 12. If it's straight guts or even stomach, it's probably going to be 24 hours before this bull expires. And that's just the facts of the matter. So we completely backed out of the area as quiet as we could, got back, drove back. I came back home. Jay went back home. And then about an hour and a half before dark, we went back, recovered the arrow, and realized right away, like, okay, there is, and this is something I think is important. I always carry a tape measure roll in my pack. And that's not to score animals. It's for instances just like this. I wanted to know exactly how many inches of arrow were in that animal. I knew my broadhead was still in him, and I knew I had almost 19 inches of arrow still in that animal.
Oh, wait. We didn't cover, like, you're jumping ahead, or you're giving too much information.
I don't know.
You covered. So in other words, when you said you recovered the arrow, what you actually meant to say, from, I'm putting two and two together here, you recovered a portion of the arrow.
Recovered a portion of the arrow. Yeah, we recovered the lighted knock, shooting a lighted knock, an Easton 5.0, and we recovered the fletched end of the shaft. And so then I took that next to another arrow and then took a measurement and to see how much of that arrow shaft was inside of that animal. And gotcha. I knew the broadhead was still attached.
So you had, what broadhead did you shoot?
It was a Sever hybrid TI 4-blade.
Gotcha. And so you had the Sever in there, which is that hybrid that's got the front bleeder blades, right?
Yep, it's got the 0.7-inch bleeder blade and then the 1.5-inch expandable cut. So it's like 2.1 or 2.2 total inches.
So you got some pretty nasty cutting surface inside this bull, and right, what did you say, 17 inches of arrow?
Yeah, almost 19 inches of penetration.
Gotcha.
So which then led me to believe that I didn't just grass bag him, because that usually just stops it. I mean, you're going to get penetration, but you're going to get 8 to 12. Having so much penetration led me to believe that I may have caught the liver, and that or I was actually in like the guts intestine type area, which also will sometimes allow for that type of penetration. I did know that the bull, when he turned to leave, I saw the exit side, and there was no exit. I could clearly see that there was no exit. So we then just took up the trail right from the arrow. At the side of the arrow, there was zero blood, nothing. We took the bull 42 yards by track until he stopped into those trees, a little bit in the trees, and we found two blood about the size of that iPod case, just a couple of drops that would have covered that, and that was it. So we started trailing the bull just on track, and I think this is something super important. When you're doing this, there's the toilet paper method, there's the tie ribbons to trees. I just turn on my tracker on my Hunt Stand app, OnX app, whatever you want to use. All these apps have a tracker, and that allows you to come right back to an area that's a track. I'll also drop pins along these areas too, because I might say, okay, last blood for sure here, bed here, whatever. And we took this bull 0.65 miles, and he walked almost in a straight line, like literally looking at the track. It was almost a straight line. And he crossed straight up open country. I mean, cactus flat open country, and headed straight to the mouth of another canyon. We trailed him into there, all by track. And this is super slow going. This is one guy is ahead looking for track, and the other guy is standing at the last track. Because what will happen here, and this is a type of deal where you don't want a lot of people, because what happens is then people start just milling around, and all of a sudden the track you need to find just got stepped on, or somebody kicked it over. I mean, we could see a couple places where he even, pushed the grass down with a hoof. And we were able to track this bull back into the timber. And as soon as he got into the timber, we found a spot on a cedar tree. It looked like if you took a young horse and tied that horse up, and it didn't want to be tied up, and it just stood there and pranced back and forth, left, right, up and down, and just chewed up the ground. And in that spot, there was a little more blood. There was blood now that would be about the size of an iPhone case, just in spots. And then we took it about another 40 yards, and he'd done it again, and there was a little more blood. And we felt really good about this, because now we had taken the bull into the canyon, and we weren't just tracking him in the grass and the sage, which is just borderline impossible. And at that point, it was getting dark enough that we said, okay, we've got him in the canyon. We're on last blood for sure. We're going to back out. It was going to be cool that evening. We'll come back the next morning. And then,
so that was all, that was so that's sunset on the 9th of September.
Yep.
And so now it's the morning of the 10th, and you're back where you left off at last blood.
Yep. Only to find about 3/4 of an inch of rain had fallen.
Oh, you didn't know that? That wasn't forecast?
It was not in the forecast at all. We were actually talking about it while we left, that we were excited about the fact where at least there's no rain forecasted. And I watched it that night on my radar, because, you're not going to sleep. So I'm watching on my radar, and the cell just keeps building. And that's kind of what we've had this year. It's just we've had abnormal amounts of rainfall. We got to the last blood, and you couldn't even tell a bull had stood there. So now tracks were gone. Now you're just on a grid search in a massive mouth of a canyon that is very rocky and just as thick as any dense timber you're going to find in the mountains. So now you are literally looking for a needle in a haystack. And we knew that. And of course, we did find some tracks, and they were washed out. So you couldn't tell if it was a track made by that bull that was there a week ago, the bull I just shot, if it was another bull wandering through. So we just exhausted every option. I mean, we just tracked and went back and forth and gridded and looked and looked and looked and looked and looked. And, we put in, it was close to 32 miles, I think, but by the time we ended up finding the bull, it was actually more than 32. But I think that day it was 20 some miles that we just gridded back and forth and took walks and glassed and tried to gain vantage points and look down and in. And there was just a lot going on. And it was just, ultimately it was extremely frustrating.
Well, you talk about grid searching. I mean, I'm kind of curious, like, did you use the app for that to actually lay
Yeah,
down track to see where you had been? And
we did. We did. What we did was we just took and went exactly from where the bull last was, and we walked a half mile straight, and then we would walk about 200 yards over and walk a half mile back. And it was just like, it looked like a maze on the tracker. I mean, it was just down, over, back, down, over, back, down, over, back. And we exhausted the right side of the canyon. And then we exhausted the upper half of the left side of the canyon. And then when that didn't turn up anything, we started looking for any water sources that we knew were already there. So there were 2 ponds. We went to both of those ponds. We grid searched everything same way around those ponds. It was an exhausting ordeal. And then of course the whole time, I mean, it's physically taxing for sure. But it's also just mentally you're just beating yourself up. And then you've got a buddy out there that's just, he's just out there helping you, and you're wasting I mean, you're not wasting, but you feel that way. You feel this enormous sense of responsibility on your shoulders. Like, this bull should be in the processor. I should be doing this. This should be done. And we're out here doing this because of a lapse in of paying attention, basically.
No matter where your pursuits take you, no matter the quarry, there's always an element of chance.
Deer.
But skill is more reliable than luck.
I feel like we're in a pretty good position. We're just gonna have to wait.
The most trusted archery authority, Bowhunter TV. Watch now on Outdoor Channel, Sportsman Channel, and My Outdoor TV.
well, what's your mindset at this point? Like, are you obviously you're frustrated and disappointed that you haven't found the elk, but what's your
Yeah.
feeling about it? Are you telling yourself at this point, like, I know this elk is dead, he's got to be here somewhere? Or are you like, I don't know, maybe this elk isn't dead, maybe this elk is 5 miles away? I don't know.
I think that is something that enters everybody's mind is, part of me wanted to believe that, like, okay, maybe it's not lethal. Maybe this bull's going to be fine, because I would rather that. I mean, if it's like, I mean, it was not a lethal shot, but I've bow hunted long enough. I've been blessed enough to harvest enough animals. I knew that this animal was dead. I knew that he was. If you cut the stomach, if you get in the intestines, if you nick the liver, the bull's going to die. He's going to die. Now, how far that bull's going to walk or what he's going to do, it varies by scenario. Most of the time, a gut shot bull will go into timber like he went into, do what he did, and then he will lay down. And he may do that 4, 5, 6, 7 times. But this bull had much closer timber he could have went to originally, and he chose to walk 6,500ths of a mile away from that timber across an opening to get back to this other specific canyon. And I think sometimes, when an animal's injured, something happens negatively. These animals, I really believe, have places that they want to get to. For whatever reason that may be in their mind, they want to get back to this spot. And so that's what I believed in my mind is that bull, because if you look at it, he could have went 100 yards to his left and stayed in really thick timber, just like the timber he went 0.6 of a mile to walk to. But for some reason, he decided he wanted to walk there. So I knew he was there. I knew he was in there. I knew he was dead in there somewhere or was expiring to some, but it was maddening because I couldn't find beds. You can't glass. There's no big ridge. I had called some people. Heck, I talked to you, and everybody has their different opinions. Like, well, get on a ridge and glass in there. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way out here. There's no ridge for me to climb up on. It's just a sea of cedars, and I've got to get lucky. And I just got to keep looking. And so knowing that bull was dead somewhere, just said, this is going to be horrible, but you got to just keep looking. You got to just keep looking.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question was going to be. No, it's good because my next question, I think we can talk about it a little bit more. My next question was going to be like, because this is a question for everybody who's ever been there, and everybody who's ever been there is most of us. If you're a bow hunter and you've been doing this for a while, you've been sort of in Jace's shoes, probably, more than once over the course of a lifetime. The question, and it lingers, it's in the back of your mind. At what point do I give up? And I'm not saying you were at that point, but everybody thinks about that. And, and in whitetail country, what I find is complicating, if you want to draw some parallels or try and extrapolate this to whitetail, a lot of times what we're dealing with in whitetail country is property lines, small properties. You're kind of boxed in, or like you said, the friends. Sometimes you got 4 or 5 guys, you're out there for hours and hours, and it's like, and everyone's looking to you as the hunter, Jace, because ultimately, right? Like, your buddy might be like, well, I give up. You know what I mean? But like,
and they're not emotionally involved either, right? Like they want to see you do well, but they're also not emotionally involved. They can say, they're just waiting for you to go, dude, this bull's gone. Okay, let's go. Thank God he just said that type of deal.
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yes.
Hey, I'm glad you said that because that is
totally,
true. Like,
totally
I've been there, right?
And,
and like everyone's kind of like, when is this guy going to give up? Because we all want to go have lunch or whatever it is.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
exactly.
So, but you felt very confident it was dead, and so I mean, like, you didn't find it that day. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. It's exactly what I'm telling you. Absolutely crazy. So, at that point, you definitely start to sit here and think about like, okay, well, what do I do more? What's right now? What's correct now? What's the right move to do here? I have this tag in my pocket. I have given what my state would define as a really good effort. I mean, I've looked for one full day. I looked for an afternoon of another day, which would have been the day I shot it. I've put in a good effort, and I haven't turned up that animal. So now you're faced with, what do you do? Do you just start hunting again? I mean, do you have this tag, and do you just start hunting again? And to be honest,
and here's the thing, right? To your point, there's no law. There's no hard and fast rule that says what you should or have to do. And I can tell you that back east here in deer country, gosh, I'm going to say more than half, way more than half,
sure.
Especially if it's not a big buck, especially if it's a doe, guy shoots a doe, let's say a guy shoots a doe at 9:30 in the morning, and then he loses the trail. Maybe he goes home for lunch, he has lunch, he comes back, in the afternoon, maybe 2-3 o'clock. He looks around until dusk. He doesn't find it. That's it. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be like, well, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's one less doe out there, but I still got a tag. I'll shoot another one, you know?
Exactly, exactly. And and I don't fault anybody. If I don't want anybody to this to come across like, well, I kind of had something similar happen and then I shot another bull. Like you said, Christian, there's no hard and fast law that says you have to walk 42 miles. I have to see a grid search pattern. I have to check all these boxes. It's like, no, you gave what you feel like was an honest effort to recover the animal. You didn't. You still have a tag in your pocket. You did not put it on that carcass. You continue hunting. But like that night, I just sat there and I just was like, okay, I know he's dead. Like it just, and when I convince myself of something, I'm very strong-willed and I'm very stubborn. And because of some of the things I think I've done in my life, like just quitting, starting over wasn't an option. I had to clean up my mess.
Yeah, exactly. You didn't feel as though,
Yeah.
and this is what it really boils down to for everybody. Everyone has to feel like they got to the end of the road, and
Right.
the end of the road isn't necessarily going to be the same place for everybody. But for you in this circumstance, you definitely didn't feel like you had reached the end of the road.
No. I felt like I had a mess and I had to clean it up.
And and here's the thing, for those who don't, know Jace, maybe this is a guy who runs like ultra marathons in the backcountry, and he's kind of a crazy dude. So, like he said, when he convinces himself, like if this guy tells himself he can run, 120 miles on the trails, like for 24 hours straight or however long those things take you, I mean,
Right.
so it's not probably that big of a deal for you to be like, yeah, I'm going to go look at that same stupid canyon where I spent all day yesterday. And I still think, even though I probably like walked right all that ground, I'm going to go do it again.
Yep. And that's what I did. And
so now it's September 11th, 9/11.
Now it's 9/11. Now
Wow.
it's 9/11. And I'm just back out there, back, sitting there literally doing map studies
by yourself
on my phone. What's that?
By yourself now?
Yep. But myself, I didn't have anybody to go with me that day. So I was just solo, and honestly, I kind of needed that because I needed to just, go. I just needed to be by myself. I don't know how else to explain it. I mean, I would have gladly taken somebody's help if my son would have been there, Jay, whatever, but I just didn't have anybody that day. And I was okay with that because there was a lot of places I still felt like I needed to look. And, my wife told me before I went out there, she was like, she did two things. She's like, I want you to go to where you knew that elk was last. And I want you to say, where would you go? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, babe. Thank you. And and she's like, and I want you to get there and I want you to pray about it. And I said, okay, well, I've been praying about this, believe me. So I did that. I went over there. I got to this tree, said a little prayer, standing there looking around. And I'm like, I would never think this bull would do this, but let's see. And I walked it and he wasn't there. so
you're like, thanks, babe. Didn't work.
But I backtracked back to the same tree and I'm sitting there and I'm like, this elk has done some weird things. He could have hooked it into the timber right away, walked 6/10 of a mile. Maybe he went this way. And I got out on this canyon mouth and there's rocks. There's no dirt. It's just clickety clackety canyon cap rock. And I'm just kind of looking around and there's all these little fingers coming up off of this canyon and I'm looking and I glanced over and I saw a golden eagle and it flew out of a tree. Now there was no crows, there was no vultures, there was no buzzards, there was no nothing. There was a golden eagle and he flew out of the tree. And usually eagles in our country are the first to find a kill. They're the first thing that get over and get on the kill. And then they're very protective because they're an eagle. I mean, they're bad dudes. I mean, they'll eventually the buzzards and crows will get there, but an eagle is usually, and I'm like, So I sat down for a minute and I was like, okay, I'm just really going to glass and look and make sure. Da, 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 da. And I walked over there and got to the edge of this cap rock, and I'm looking and I'm like, well, false alarm. Eagle, just an eagle in a tree. And I literally said that, and I turned and looked to my left, and the bull was laying about 10 feet down, about a basketball height rim straight down in the bottom of this little tiny gully. And he had not been there. I mean, I'm not going to say that he just died, because that's not the case. And I don't want to paint a picture that it wasn't. But in our country, you've been out here, Christian, we are coyote lousy. We have a lot of bear. There are lions. There are tons of vultures and crows and everything else. And nothing, the elk is completely laying there intact. And the sense of relief that I felt, I mean, I got a little emotional. I was just, thankful, sat down, just thanking God that that I didn't quit, that I stayed on it, and that there's my bull. And he's a really cool bull. He's a really unique bull. He has a freak set of horns. He's a 7x3. He's really gnarly, older bull. And I was just glad to have that closure. I was glad to have that conclusion. And looking back on it, of course, I would have had it different, right? I would have double lunged him. He would have went 30 yards and I would have been elated. But what happened here is yet another learning experience that I get to pass on to other bow hunters, that I got to pass on to my son, that people get to see, is that, you just don't quit. Like you just can't stop. If in your heart of hearts, you feel like the animal's dead, then you just keep going. You just keep going. Now, I understand there's property boundaries, and I understand that landowners don't have to allow access. That was not an issue for me where I was. So I understand those types of things. But I think that when and as a bow hunter, especially if you've been doing it a while, like deep in your mind, like that animal's going to die. Then you just keep going until you find that animal, or I think like what kept me going back was I knew I couldn't go hunting again and be okay with it. I would have carried such a weight on me that I wouldn't have been able to enjoy my time out there. So I sat there, I punched my tag, and called my son, and he drove an hour and a half to help me get this thing out. And it was it was awesome, man. It was just really cool.
So, yeah, I mean, and congratulations on, the effort. It's funny in elk hunting, a lot of times, I think we've probably even run some articles over the years about this. Like, you'll see like a headline, the 65-mile bull, and it'll be the story
Yeah.
about nothing like what we just talked about. It'll be a story about how a guy hunted in the backcountry for like 5 days, and he walked, from dawn to dark every day until he finally found an elk or had an encounter, and
Right.
so and then he made a good shot and he kills this deer, or this elk rather, and it's a 65-mile bull because he checked his GPS and he had hiked 65 miles to get this bull.
Yeah.
I mean, so sometimes, guys, like the 65 miles comes after the shot, not before the shot. You know what I mean?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And Christian, when you're sitting there and like you're watching all these videos, and I'm watching videos of elk get hits, and I'm looking at articles and all this stuff. And I did find one article by Chuck Adams, and I can't remember where it was, what
does that guy know? What is that?
It was, yeah, right. It was years ago. And he had like, I think it was the 33-mile bull or something like that between him and his wife. And it was a day longer than even my bull went.
He just killed another big one, by the way.
I know. The guy's a machine.
Yeah.
Just a machine. And so I'm sitting there and I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, Chuck Adams, one of the best bow hunters ever, arguably, he hit a bull bad, and he wrote this entire story about and told his story, which to be honest, gave me a sense of like some comfort too. Like, I mean, as weird as that sounds, it was like, okay, even though you're not alone in it, you feel alone at the time. You feel like you're the only one in the world that's ever done this. because it's happening to you at that moment. When it happens to your buddy, you're the guy there going, oh, bro, it's okay. I got you. This happens to everybody. 6 years ago, this happens to me. And you can tell me that all you want. And I'm going to still sit there and beat my head against the wall going, yeah, but this happened to me. I'm the one dealing with it. But for some reason, that did give me some crazy comfort to know that him and his wife grid searched this canyon. And it sounded very similar. It was very interesting. I'm going to have to go back and look at where it was at. But so yeah, man, it was, I found my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It was a long rainbow. It was miles and miles and miles. And but it just kept going and the hard work and all that stuff was eventually rewarded, which I was just super thankful for.
And so what was you mentioned it hadn't been scavenged or anything. I mean,
Nope.
were you able to salvage anything more than the rack from this animal?
So, the thing is, and I think like when we talk about these things is, honesty is important. You got to be, I could sit here and tell you, oh yeah, dude, we got stone lucky and he fell in this glacial cave and it's Southeast Colorado in early September. I mean, he would have made it through the night. The meat would have been fine. But, I still felt a sense of, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just how my mind works. I'm weird. But I went ahead and I packed that entire bull out. It was not a fun task, but I went ahead and got that entire bull out and I put my tag proudly on that bull because that's just what I felt like I had to do. And, I got home and obviously you could tell, the meat is not salvageable. It's not good. It's not going to be good. I went as far as having a butcher friend of mine, look at it. And he's like, bro, I wouldn't, no, there's zero chance here. But, that's one of those things. I mean,
well, I
yeah,
mean,
it's what makes me want to do better. Makes me want to do better in 2026, I guess, is one of those things.
I mean, we can look at it. You can look at it both ways. It's easy to make an argument that, you should have known. And it's probably even easier in my mind to make an argument like you didn't do anything wrong, really. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
Like tiny little detail can escape you, as Bill Winke is fond of saying. And he's written about this like a gajillion times about like ingraining your shot process.
Yep.
And not specific to what you're talking about, although it's part of it. Is the whole point is he knows what we all sort of know is you don't do your best thinking at full draw with an animal in front of you. You know what I mean? So you want to do everything you can in advance to make sure you don't have to do a lot of thinking at full draw with an animal in front of you. And when you were talking earlier, we were talking about like when to give up and like when to make that decision. Another thing that popped in my mind, because we were talking about how, there's no law. You kind of
Right.
have to decide for yourself. One
Yeah.
place where there is, it's not a law, but I'll say a stipulation. You know how when you hunt with an outfitter, I don't know about you, when you go to an outfitter, there's always a little more, to me anyway, there's a little more pressure when I hunt with
Sure
an
there is.
outfitter because
Sure.
now you're not just hunting for yourself. You're actually trying to validate all the
Yep.
work that the outfitter has done to provide you
Sure.
with an opportunity.
That's
and then
right.
the other thing is, oftentimes at an outfitter, what's the rule? If you draw blood,
That's your animal.
that's your animal. That's your animal.
We know it well.
And let me tell you something. To your point with this little situation and that cedar tree, there are probably times if I would be at home here in Pennsylvania, just hunting on my buddy's farm down the road, where I might like see a deer come in and just draw my bow and take a shot and not think maybe quite as much about it as if I'm in Kansas and I'm hunting with an outfitter and sort of the same scenario plays out. But
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second here. Like, this is 42 yards and like there's like a 12-mile-an-hour wind, and I don't know if like I can hold steady enough, and what if I hit this deer like a couple inches further off than I want to, and now we can't find it. And all of a sudden you're like, nope, my max range isn't 45 yards anymore, it's 35 or it's 30.
So
or,
true.
or you understand what I'm saying? And
I do, because I think the same.
That's a good mindset, right? It's a good
It is a good mindset to be in.
Like,
yeah, it's a good mindset to be in.
Be critical. In other words, take that same critical thinking, that same sort of like, I don't want anything, any possibility of something going wrong. I'm not doing it because I don't want to cost myself my hunt right here.
And that's exactly right. Because, at the end of the day, like you said, on some of those hunts, and I can't imagine, like, I've been trying to find some way somehow to sheep hunt again, somewhere, somehow, some way. It's not going to happen unless I hit the Powerball. But I couldn't imagine. I mean, and not just sheep, but any animal. When you're paying the cost of hunts, and you enlist an outfitter, just like you said, you feel a sense of responsibility. Like, okay, I want to promote their business. They've worked hard. I want to get the animal down. I want to make it as easy on them as possible because they're trying to help me out. And at the end of the day, that's my animal. And if it was a $20,000 hunt, guess what? Whether I recover that animal or not, I'm writing a $20,000 check. So, like, the focus, bringing that type of focus and awareness, exactly what you're saying, into every hunt is, I think it's hypercritical. And, looking back, I've replayed it 1,000 times. Like, when I sat down and got on my knees the first time, I said, oh, that cedar. And I immediately dismissed it as, he ain't going to go that way anyway. And even if he does, I'm not going to hit that. to completely blanked out, ready to shoot a cedar tree with a freaking arrow and have my buddy watch, because I'm convinced that something's wrong with my bow. I'm convinced something happened here. And because I wasn't with it in my right mind at that point. No, I'm mad. I'm irritated. Yeah. I want to fight. I want to argue. And he's like, you're going to shoot a tree? And I'm like, yes, watch where my arrow hits. Just watch the flight of my arrow. And he's like, well, let's hold on a minute, type of deal, because that's how intense it can get, and in those moments leading up to that release, to that release, and those moments immediately after. Looking back, I wouldn't have done anything different except not shoot a stupid cedar limb. Other than that, I was very, very proud. I wouldn't say proud's not the right word. I was very pleased at the time that we waited. I think that was mandatory. I was glad we did not continue on that night. We didn't think it was going to rain. There was no rain in the forecast. We got unlucky. That goes back to what I talked about. In bow hunting, what can go wrong will go wrong a lot of times. And there's just punches you got to roll with. If you're gonna do this, you're gonna have stuff that just doesn't go your way. 9.9 things can go right in bow hunting. And if that last 10th doesn't go your way, then it doesn't happen. It's got to be 10 out of 10 or most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, you think about it, like, yeah, you can say, we can say, okay, in hindsight, you allowed yourself to make a bad assumption, which is, that cedar just was never going to come into play. But we could also say, yeah, but what if it didn't rain that first night? And then you got out the second morning, you got back on the trail. Maybe you recover that bull that morning, and we're having a completely different conversation about how it all turned out. And you're still a little aggravated that you hit that cedar, but you're like, well, it was just a learning experience. It's good. Yep. It'll make me better for next time. Instead of being like, agonizing over it a little bit more. Like you said, there's so many things. What it really boils down to is, and this is something that Randy Ulmer has just harped on for as long as, I've been like consuming Randy's content, is control everything you can control, because there's so many things in bow hunting that are outside of your control, whether that's some freak rainstorm or, a million other little things that just control everything you can control. So, hey, you haven't reached absolute perfection yet, Jace. Nope. None of us have. Nope. None of us have. But you're striving. Right. It just
One of my favorite quotes in any movie is with Kevin Costner in a movie called Tin Cup. It's a golf movie, and he's given this speech to Rene Russo, and he says, perfection is unattainable. And he's talking about golf. He says, perfection is unattainable. And I really feel like that in bow hunting. I mean, I feel like total perfection is unattainable, but you should never stop chasing it. Like, I want to be perfect. I want to, and you could string together a couple of years or maybe for something more where you're like, I was laced every animal. I did this right, I did that right, da, 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 da. But eventually something's going to happen and something's going to go wrong. And then it becomes about what you know, your knowledge, how you react to what went wrong, your mindset, all of those types of things then come into play. And then, like you said, you reevaluate and you think about how you could do it differently. And then you put plans and things in place to try to do your job better the next go around. Because it doesn't matter what, what you do. I mean, I was watching a deal last night, listening to Tom Brady talk about, Tom was the greatest of all time, in my opinion. Jordan was the greatest of all time, in my opinion. And these guys still went out and laid an egg from time to time. I mean, some big ones. And it's like, why is this any different? As hard as we work and as hard as we try and as much as we demand of ourselves, we're still human beings and we're imperfect. So that's something you've got to keep in the back of your mind. I try to suppress it, and I think everybody does, because you want to think of yourself as bulletproof and going to make it happen. And I think you have to have that mindset all the time. But when something happens and it doesn't, you have to be able to reflect and then not harbor it forever. And you got to let it go and realize, okay, tomorrow's a new day and I got to start again.
Yeah. And I mean, I even think back, there's degrees of all this. And to the point, you mentioned Jordan and Brady, the stuff that Jordan and Brady were trying to improve upon, at the height of their careers was far different from what they were improving upon when they were in the middle school and, high school. And I think
100%.
about when I first started bow hunting, it was in my early 20s, and I had been just a deer hunter for a couple of years with firearms. And then I got into bow hunting, and I remember I hit this nice buck and I hit him right in the ass. I made a terrible shot. I had bad buck fever. I had bad buck. I had bad buck fever. He was broadside. It was in the hip, basically. Okay. It was right in the ham. Okay. And, but the point is, I had bad buck fever and I couldn't draw my bow. And I had to make like 3 attempts to draw my bow. And a wiser, older Christian would have known, like, dude, don't shoot. This isn't the time. Like, you're not in control of your faculties. You're not prepared. But I managed to get the bow back. And that was the worst thing that could have happened in that situation, because I was dangerous to everything but a lethal shot. You know what I mean? At that point. And anyway, I guess it was lethal. But point is, I hit this buck. And it ran off, and we couldn't find it right away. And long story short, it ended up dying down in the creek, like not too far away, but not on the property that I was hunting. And somebody cut its head off and let the body to rot there in the creek, and it was just, the whole thing was just a disgusting waste. And I felt sick about it, sick. And this was like, this is way pre Bowhunter, pre Peterson's bow hunting, pre outdoor. I'm just a young guy just getting into bow hunting. And I literally remember telling myself, like, you have to be better or you have to quit.
You have to quit. Yep.
And
this might not be for you.
And it was like, that actually pushed me to be way more prepared, like the next season. You know what I mean? And
100%.
and so it's my point in sharing that. It still bothers me, to be honest with you, even having just said it again. Like, I hate thinking about it. But the point is, it's a never-ending progression. Whether you're just starting out and you made a really big blunder because you just honestly don't know any better, to whether you do what happened to Jace, where Jace has been doing this a long time and he does know better, but yet we're still not perfect, but we're a lot more refined than we were 20, 30 years ago. But we're not perfect,
That's very true.
Yeah. So, I mean, hey man, I commend you. And it's a great lesson. Like, I just think the takeaway, you know, not only in making good decisions and giving time, like I would translate it on whitetail, like a gut shot whitetail, I do, you know, 10 hours. If it's in the evening, for sure, just overnight. Like if you shoot a
Yeah.
whitetail in the guts in the evening,
Yep.
don't even think about going after
You're
it
just gonna
until
bump him. You're
just
gonna
sleep.
move him. He's not dead.
He's gonna die. He's gonna die probably in his first bed,
Yep.
almost certainly in his second bed. They're not as tough as elk. They're tough, but they're not as tough as elk.
Right.
And you know, if you don't push that deer, it's probably not going to go real far.
100% correct.
But more than that, it's just staying on it for longer than you think. Probably is the big. Like,
Yep.
don't be so quick to give up just because your buddies are all, they've had it. You know, they're done. Their wife says they got to come home or they got to go to work or whatever they have to do. Like, dude, just give it a little bit longer and you might be surprised that you find your animal.
Absolutely correct.
Well, Jace, I tell you what, I mean, like I told you when we set this up, it's probably not like, you know, your favorite story that you'll ever tell, but I thought I was like, honestly, it's a story worth telling.
I think so.
And it was a really cool bull. You know what I mean? Like,
Was a cool
neat rack. And you know, I mean, I think you're deserving of, you know, if you're going to take the self-criticism or beating yourself up, I think it's within my rights to commend you for the effort. You know what I mean? We can't fault you for the effort that you put in.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. And I appreciate that, man. And like what matters most to me, and I've said it, I've wrote it many times over the years. I say it on social media. I say it all the time, is I'm happy to throw myself under the bus. I'm happy to be the guy that people point at and go, well, he's supposed to be really good at this. And look what he did. I'm happy to be that guy, because if one or two people can take something away from it and they actually learn from it, then what I'm doing matters. If everybody just continues to go, oh, and not that anybody does, but oh my gosh, you know, that guy, oh, wow, I don't want that. I want people to realize, like, I'm zero different. I'm a basketball coach. I was a teacher. I feel like it's a calling on my life to try to help people and not to teach them how to bow hunt, because there's way better bow hunters, way better gear technicians, way better everything. But if through my experiences that I can share, somebody grabs something out of that and feels like that's applicable, that's what I want. That's what I want. That's what matters to me. So I'm more than willing to take any criticism or heat or whatever it may be. You know, I should have done this or I should have done that, or I can't believe you botched it at 47 yards on an elk. Yep, I sure did. And I'm happy to talk about it. So, you know, that's it.
Well, you know, I appreciate you being the humble guy that I've always found you to be. And I thank you for your time. And I know that I'm going to have you back again, because I've had you several times in the past.
Yeah, man. It's always so much fun too.
And you know, I know you've got a couple of deer tags in your pocket, and you're going to still get out there and make some more really happy stories before the season's done.
Yes, and I owe a couple deer some 12 rings, so that's the goal. The goal is what I always say, is shoot them in the lungs, and the story ends a lot quicker, but it's a lot happier.
Well, go out there and get it done, and I'll attempt to do the same, and we'll keep in touch.
And you will.
And we'll talk again soon. Jace, my best to you and your family, and be safe. Good luck the rest of the season.
Thank you, my brother. You too.
Thanks for downloading the Bowhunter podcast. All bow hunting, all the time. Pick up the latest issue of Bowhunter magazine on your local newsstand, or connect with us online at bowhunter.com.